That is the Federation of Uganda Employees marking 60 years of existence. Now, increasingly, corporate sustainability initiatives are necessary in order to complete for and retain a top talent. Employees are seeking out organizations with strong environmental programs, making these initiatives an important part of the overall employer brand. Now, the aging workforce emphasizes the importance of sustainable employment, that is the extent to which workers are able and willing to remain working now and in the future. Now, this raises the questions on how organizations can design work contexts that contribute to sustainable employment. This year, as the Federation of Uganda Employees celebrates 60 years of existence as the premier voice of employers under the theme Employers' Journey of Impactful Practices for Sustainability of Jobs, we are here to bring this conversation to context and to bring this conversation home. I have with me Mr. Douglas Opio, the Executive Director of Federation of Uganda Employers. Then we have Mr. Martin Wandera, the Director of Labour, Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development. We have Mr. Ashe Wilson Owere, the Chairman, Uganda, that is the NATU, and Mr. Stephen Opio, the Country Director. Rather, we are having a Mrs. Jackie Banya, the National Project Coordinator of ILO. And together with us, we have Mr. Rajesh Chaplot, the Managing Director, Graphic Systems Uganda Limited. I am Andrew Jamagir, and this conversation is live on YouTube and the Facebook of NTV Uganda. Be a part of this conversation as well on Twitter. Good morning, my great panel.
Good morning. Good morning.
It's very exciting one to have. We have a female on this panel that will be joining us later, and Mr. Wele Wilson, the chairperson of NOTU. Starting off with Mr. Douglas Opio, from what you see and what you make of the current pandemic where we are, COVID-19 and the employers. A few months ago, we had a bit of uncertainty with the labor turnover, the cuts that were made. Yeah. And your federation came out strongly and soundingly against this. How far are you with that?
The engagement has increasingly become a lot more challenging, I should say.
Okay.
Yeah, because then the expectation was that the pandemic would go away. At the time we were discussing 3 months
or 4 at the most, but now we are looking into even June or beyond even June next year. Okay. So the situation has become a lot more challenging for employers, but we thank the government that the restrictions have been eased a bit, so businesses can now continue to operate. Okay.
To a viewer who is not much more, engaged with your federation, what does your federation entail for starters?
We are an employers body. Essentially, we are a member-based organization, an association, the term we commonly use in Uganda. So we are an association of employers. Now, what that means is we take care of the interests of the employers. Okay. While we have NOTU who are joining us for this panel as well, they take care of the interests of the employees. Now, what we do is we facilitate that dialogue, discussions between the employer and the employee, so that together we can cause development to take place. Okay,
so how does one subscribe to become a member of your federation, and who is eligible to join? Is someone working in Chikubo eligible to join in one or the other, or is someone working in Katwe? What particular cluster do you target?
At the moment, we are targeting formal businesses. Okay. So essentially, formally registered business. It doesn't matter how many people you employ, but as long as you are formally registered business. But we also encourage those who are not formally registered to join as associates. So you can still associate with us even when you're down there at Chikubu. Of course, we know all employers start that way. The fact that you're now in Chikubu doesn't mean that's where your business is going to end. It might end up being quite a big business. We have seen those who have moved from Chikubu, now they're doing manufacturing work, making shoes and other things. So we welcome all employers, and for our case, we have also been welcoming government parastatals. Okay. And I'm happy to say even the office of the Prime Minister is a member. Okay. Yeah. So we recruit beyond the private sector, even the government as well.
I'm very glad that you actually do that. Now, that brings me to Martin here, one day who happens to be in the government. Yeah. Maybe he could possibly join you one of these days or later.
Why not?
Mr. Wandela, just to bring you to speed, tell us about the Tripartite and how it works, especially in Uganda, because most people are not aware of it and how it works.
Okay, thank you very much. The concept of tripartism comes from the word tripartite, which means involving three. And as you know, the phenomenon of industrial relations involves the employers, the workers, and government. And why it is critical is that decisions that are sustainable in industrial relations should arise out of consultations, negotiations, and exchange of information between the employers, the workers, and government. For example, industrial relations are regulated by law, but you cannot have good law if it is only written by government, because labor laws impact on workers and employers alike. So if we are to have a law or a policy that serves the citizens of this country, and particularly the workers and employers, they, as the frontline actors, should be consulted. And that's why the phenomena of tripartite consultation is very, very important. We never do anything at the Ministry of Labor without talking to the employers and the workers. Even in cases of strife, if there is industrial unrest, we always resolve it by bringing the three parties, that is the government, the workers, and employers at the table, and we resolve matters that way. So briefly, that's what it is.
That is exciting.
Yes.
And I love the way it works, but do the employees know about these? Because this is the law and it falls under a particular framework. I'm very excited about it. But do the workers know this? Has the ministry gone a notch higher to make sure that the workers are aware of this kind of tripartite?
Yes, one of our functions under the Employment Act is to provide information about the rights of workers. And we do it the way I am here, but also through inspection visits to workplaces. And I would like to say that to a great extent, the majority of workers know their rights. And we see this from the number of cases that are reported to the different labor offices in the country, but also the diverse category of workers. The complaints are filed by people with PhDs, high executive officers, to the people who are low in hierarchy, which indicates that people know, because you cannot complain about your right being violated without knowing. Where the difference arises is the extent to which people know their rights. But the basic rights, like a right to unemployment contract, a right to a wage, the right to leave, the right to maternity, progressively, many workers know about these rights. Of course, to know your right and your right to be actualized is a totally different discussion.
Okay, yes. That makes a lot of sense. Coming to Mr. Rajesh, we have the government. Wandela represents the government. We have the Federation of Ugandan Employees and
employers. Coming
to you as a business owner, describe your relationship with the Federation and how has it helped you in one way or the other have a very harmonious relationship between you and your employees?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrew. First, let me congratulate the Federation of Uganda Employers for attaining this age of wisdom, which is 60. FUE at 60 has 60 years of experience.
Oh, yes.
As a graphic system, our company, we have a 2 decades old relationship with FUE. I am very proud to say that in the year 2006, our company was awarded as the best employers of the year. And we are among the few middle-sized companies who has been given this prestigious award. And this award, since 2006, it's lying just on my office table. So I'm so proud of that. We are also the founding member of the Uganda Businesses and Disability Network, which is initiated by the Federation. Also, our HR manager has been playing some key roles in various subcommittees of the Federation. So we had a very strong relationship over these last 20 years with the Federation.
With that kind of relationship you've had and the engagements you've had, what have you seen from your perspective, from your lenses as an employer, vis-a-vis what you know, what you saw when you just come or when you've just started business here, with what the new dynamics are? What patterns have you seen that have changed in your relationship with the Federation over time?
Yeah, see, we have worked very close knit with the Federation of Uganda Employers, and when we made our HR manual, when we revised after a few years our HR manual, it was vetted by the Federation of Uganda Employers before we adopted it. And there were a lot of amendments, suggestions, language change was suggested by the Federation, and which we appreciate. And I'm proud to say, and today the government, Mr. Martin is also seated here, in this 20 years of journey of graphic system, we didn't had one single case which was dragged to the Ministry of Labor. And Federation has played a key role in supporting us so that we don't make mistakes during this journey.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, joining us on the other side, we have Mr. Wede, who happens to be still running for the same position. I've seen you, Mr. Wede, saying that you're running for the Workers' MP in Parliament. Mr. Wede, if you can hear me.
Loud and clear.
This question, and I'm going to be very blunt. Why do you think you're the best candidate for that particular position, Mr. Wede?
Hello?
Mr. Wede, can you hear me? Okay, well, I think we have a technical glitch there. We'll be getting back to Mr. Wede a little later. Coming back to you, Opio, when you look at all this that is going on, he changed his human resource manual so that it fits the standards, and as well as the government, the Employment Act, that they are in sync with all that. Have you had some employers like him come to the Federation and say, we need to align a couple of things here and there, maybe we didn't understand this, maybe our manual was not cognizant with this, and how have you helped them?
Yeah, that's one of the standard benefits we offer to all our members. Essentially, the review of an employer's manual to ensure that it's aligned with the law, we do that free of charge. It's part of the benefits package. And because of that, we have seen a lot of employers, I would say hundreds of employers who have come to us to try and we look at it from two dimensions. First, compliance with the law. Is your manual designed in accordance with the law? I give you a very basic example. If maternity leave is 60 working days and you have put in your manual 40 working days, that's already wrong. So we start from that, correcting basic errors. Is it aligned with the law? Because certain things is not at the liberty of the employer. You don't decide how long maternity leave should be. The minimum is already set in the law. Secondly, we also look at it from the angle that Rajesh just raised, from the angle of good practice. Because the law provides the minimum, but that doesn't mean that is the best an employer can do. The law might, for instance, provide 60 working days, but maybe as an employer you feel you could do more. So then we also review your manual, telling you what other employers in similar industry are doing, so that you can have a human resource manual which is rather complete.
I understand, but now you see, Mr. Wandila Aliron alluded to the tripartite. Now here you're engaging the employee, rather the employer alone. So when does the inclusion question come in for the employee?
What we do at all workplaces is to encourage a dialogue approach. So essentially, whenever we go to a particular workplace, we encourage an employer, if you do not have a trade union, for instance, at your workplace, then have a work council.
Oh.
A work council implies you can still receive grievances of the employees, you can still receive whatever issues they might be having. Because the absence of a trade union doesn't imply there are no problems at all at the workplace.
Yes.
And if there is no mechanism, if there is no channel of presenting these issues to the management team, and I'm so proud of a graphic system, it's not easy to achieve that you don't have conflicts coming up. It means the systems are there and they work. There is a mechanism for resolving them. If people are dissatisfied, they have a proper procedure to raise their grievances. So for us, we start by encouraging the employer to have a mechanism in place. Once you have a mechanism in place, ensure it works. So if it is a manual, it's a consultative process. You have to have your own internal workshops with your employees before it's eventually presented to your management team, and then of course eventually to your board for approval. Every staff should be engaged.
That makes a lot of sense. Coming back to you, Mr. Wandera Martin, I want, from your perspective as a government person here, how influential has this federation been in advancing the work done by your ministry?
First, I would like to say that the Federation of Ugandan Employers has been very central in assisting the government in creating awareness about standards and rights at the workplace. Because you cannot promote rights that people do not know. And as he has rightly said, through technical assistance that they give to their members, they have assisted in aligning the staff manuals and employee handbooks with the law. That has been very, very key. But it's one thing to have a law in place, but this is a law that is responsible for regulating relations between people, because employees are human beings. So you require people management skills. And one of the things that the Federation of Ugandan Employers has been doing is to build capacity of their members in the management of workers, especially collectively. And they do this through bilateral engagement with their different members, but also through training programs that they organize. They right now organize a diploma in employee relations, jointly organized with the International Training Center of the ILO. This has helped many human resource managers improve their capacity in people management, and particularly industrial relations. And I would like to urge human resource managers who have not participated in this program to do so. The Federation of Ugandan Employers, as I have said, is a key stakeholder in the development of labor and employment policy in this country. And good policy is evidence-based. And I have known the Federation of Ugandan Employers for being very keen at carrying out labor and employment-related research, which has not only been useful for their engagement in social dialogue, but we have found it valuable in informing policy. And therefore, because they carry out research, their advice that they give to government is always solid. The other area where we've found the Federation of a worthy partner has been in the settlement of disputes. Because, as I said, workers and employers are human beings. Sometimes they look at things differently to the extent that there is a breakdown. And because of the influence that they have over their employers, it has always been easy for us to come together with NOTU and COF2 to resolve disputes that potentially could have far-reaching negative economic effects. The other thing is the representative role. The compendium of business enterprises shows that there are over 500,000 workplaces. Now you imagine if we had to deal with each of these.
It is tedious.
Yeah, but now through the Federation of Uganda Employers, we are able to communicate to all these employers, but also we are able to hear the voices of the employers through one voice of the Federation. And as a ministry, we could not have had any better partner than the FUE. And I want to congratulate you for first surviving for 60 years, but not only surviving, but making a great contribution. There is no single labor law in this country that is not inked with the wisdom of Federation of Uganda Employers and their colleagues, the workers from NOTU and COF2. So Douglas, we appreciate.
Thank you.
60 years.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Douglas. Coming to Mr. Rajesh, as an employer, I'll take you as the best employer of the year, like you earlier said.
Yeah.
With all these in play, the Federation coming through, helping you to come up with your human resource manual that actually resonates with the laws of the land, and not only that, that to make sure that your workers are in a working good environment. What are some of the benefits you've achieved with working with the Federation besides the human resource manual, you know, being aligned with the laws of this country?
Yeah, over this journey of 20 years, we have been associated with the Federation for various training programs. Now, training, there are maybe many topics, and the upcoming new topics. And I'll give you some example: firefighting, fire prevention, first aid, managing dismissals and terminations, how to work with trade unions. So there are many training programs they organize which improves the employer-employee relationship, and there are many training programs they organize just for the employees, for the betterment of employees, like negotiation skills, retirement plan. So these are the training sessions our staff in various departments from time to time have attended. And also we have been taking the expert opinion whenever there is some confusion on the meaning of the law. We go to the Federation of Uganda Employers and we take their opinion so that we don't go wrong. As I earlier said, because of that we never went, or nobody dragged us to the Ministry of Labor to us. So these were the 2-3 issues, but I would like to touch upon, you asked one question to Mr. Martin, do workers know their rights?
Yes.
Now, because as an employer, yes, broadly they know, but when many times when they have a problem, they go to consultants and lawyers, and there they get being misguided. So I will ask maybe Mr. Martin to talk on it, that do Ministry of Labor have a cell where workers can go directly and they avoid those to the ministry directly to get the right opinion? Because the lawyers, because they are looking for the money. When the case comes, there is a money involved in it. So if the workers can go directly to the Ministry of Labor and get that expert opinion from them, I think it would help the workers and also to the employer, because employer wastes a lot of time in this negotiations.
Mr. Wandera, from the district level, do we have representatives that can mitigate these issues?
Yes, we have labor officers, unfortunately not in all districts, because the rate at which districts are created has grown faster than labor officers.
Sure.
But he raises a very important point. Not all matters, leave alone employment matters, require the services of
the ministry.
Of the lawyer.
Of the lawyer, yes.
But the Constitution says, and the employment laws, that someone has a right to representation. We also face this challenge sometimes in the settlement of conflicts, disputes between employers. We've noted that where you're dealing directly with the party and the employer without a third party, that is a lawyer representing a worker or the employer, we tend to solve these disputes much faster.
Okay.
Because we do not get bogged down by procedural matters. But the first thing the lawyers will do, they will say, oh, I have a PO, that's preliminary objection in their jargon. For me, if it is, mine is, yes, was this person employed by you? Yes. If you say he was your employer, what is the evidence?
Contract?
Do you have a contract?
Letter?
Do you have an appointment letter? If you don't, do you have any evidence of payment of wages? Do you have any evidence of NSSF payment? Do you have an ID? Now, if I have any of those, then I will tell the employer that
the evidence is just enough.
The evidence is here. So if he's saying you never paid your salary and you usually pay it through the bank, all I need is evidence of the transfer. If you don't have it from our opinion here, you've not paid wages. But you know, for lawyers, they will. What I have said in these few words, they will say it in different jargons, in many words and a lot of time.
Oh yes.
So what we are encouraging people is to try and educate yourself about the law, and we also encourage employers to try and resolve the matters themselves, because you note that even at a workplace where there is a dispute between an employer and an employee, you find that the human resource managers and even in-house legal officers have somehow given up their job, and you know, they bring in an external lawyer. One, it's costly. Two, they do not understand the internal dynamics.
Oh yes.
But as I say, it is their constitutional right, it is
be
their
represented.
You cannot stop them or any party from asking for the services of a lawyer.
Okay. There is a tweet here. This comes in on that very issue. This comes in from a lady called Businje. She says, morning NTV, I'm watching this and I work with a Chinese company called the CCECC, working on the PG Busega Express Highway. We have highlighted our issues that our employees are not following the labor law. We are being mistreated, but even when it comes out in the media, federations like the one of Douglas don't come out. Do we qualify for that, or we are just other Ugandans, the ministry and such federations cannot come
Maybe
out?
That is my question, because we are responsible for compliance, and what I'm going to do immediately after this is to ask the Commissioner Labour and Commissioner Osh to inspect that workplace.
Okay.
To look at the issues of rights, but also at the issues of occupational safety and health.
Okay.
I would like to thank the viewer for raising that.
Businje, thank you so much for raising that. And well, if we can go to Mr. Wede, if you can hear me, Mr. Wede. Mr. Wede, if you can hear me this early morning, and good to have you this early morning with Miss Jackie Banya. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Joe.
Okay, Mr. Wede, I'll start with you. I saw your poster making rounds on social media. You're standing as the employers, rather the workers' MP in Parliament come this season. What makes you feel that you're the best candidate for this, Mr. Wede?
Because I've been there for workers all the time. During the day, at night.
Mr. Wede, I can't hear you.
I've been there for workers throughout my life since I became a worker. Are you getting me?
I can't hear what you're saying.
You can't hear me?
Okay, now I can hear you. Carry on, sir.
First of all, I want to thank NTV for inviting us here. And I want to congratulate Federation of Uganda Employers for making 60 years. And we have been working quite well with Federation of Uganda Employers. And I come back to the question you asked me, why do I think I'm the best candidate?
Yes.
Because I've been there for workers, and I still stand with them, and I'll defend them. I'm their defender.
Okay, there is a precedent that was reported to you via a Twitter handle of a lady who was being harassed by bosses about dismissals. That was in the side of Entebbe, and you handled it expeditiously. With your interaction with employees and employers in Uganda, what is the biggest glitch that needs to be addressed from your perspective?
No, first of all, there are some employers who actually have refused categorically to recognize workers to join the association of their choice, which is actually against the law. And normally what we do with the Federation of Uganda Employers, we go to those employers, we recruit people secretly, and then make them known to the ministry. Once the ministry is aware, then we inform the Federation of Uganda Employers. Normally they go and actually talk to them, train them, and educate them about the issue of industrial relations. And in most cases we have succeeded, but we have a challenge with especially the Chinese companies. They don't want to know anything about issue of freedom of association on the side of the workers, which is a very big challenge, and we are trying to address it as a tripartite. But what we are trying to do now is some of them actually, they are those we have taken to court. There are those we have worked out a system with the Federation of Uganda Employers, and once they join Federation of Uganda Employers, then they conform and accept to give workers their freedom.
Wow, that is very exciting. You bring this on the heels of one Businja saying that a company called the CCECC on Twitter saying that they're Chinese and they have not been, following the Labour Act as per the law. But Mr. Wanda is going to run with it. But fast forward, your relationship with the Federation of the Uganda Employers for the 60 years, how has it been and how has it evolved, given that you're the chairperson of NOTU?
Federation of Uganda Employers and the National Organization of Trade Unions, who have been working quite well. I remember when I came in as a leader of National Organization of Trade Unions, we have had several meetings and trainings together. First of all, to educate both employers and employees on the importance of working together, because we need each other. Without employers, without employees, we cannot have these organizations. So what we normally do as a tripartite under the International Labour Organization, government is the custodian of law. Now, employers take charge of employers. Now, we also take charge of employees. Now, what we do, we work together in order to strengthen the industrial harmony, industrial relations at workplaces. We ensure that there's a working relations between a worker and the employee, and when there is any problem, we normally amicably sort out this problem. Now, what we have also done, we are trying to ensure that we have a strong labor administration in the country. By the time I came, there was a lot of problem in the ministry, but I thank especially the government now, because there has been improvement. When by then they posted the permanent secretary, who actually transformed that ministry, but unfortunately they have now removed him, and but he has left the system in place. What we are still clamoring for is now we would like to see our own Ministry of Labour, where we have a direct administration under Labour, where we are not mixed with many other players. But under the International Labour Organization, as a tripartite, right from our country up to the International Labour Organization, we work as a tripartite. And through that interaction, we do a lot of trainings, especially Federation of Uganda Employers. There are things that we do in common. First of all, to educate both employers and employees about the freedom of association, why a worker should belong to the union. And then the employers also do their part to educate the employers why a worker should be given his or her freedom of association. And that way, a worker is recognized by making an agreement. And when a recognition is done, then later on, what is done again is they negotiate through collective bargaining agreement. I'll give you an example, an organization where I was working, that is Civil Aviation Authority, is one of the best paying organization in this country today because of the good working relationship between the Federation of Uganda Employers and the National Organization of Trade Unions, then our mother union, which is Amalgamated Transport and General Workers Union. Because we identify the issues of the workers, address them through the right fora, especially through industrial relations, whereby management, workers sit on a round table, they negotiate and sort out any issue that comes on the table. Where they disagree, they agree to disagree. But in most cases, we agree. And once a recognition is done to the workers, and workers know that they have their freedom, negotiation between management, the union, gives them a lot of hope. And in an industry, you find that work goes on smoothly without any hindrance. But where there is no union, there is no freedom of association, there's always firefighting, where management and workers have a running battle.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wele. And now coming back in here, there is another tweet coming in from Komakech, says, NTV, a very good morning. I'm so grateful that we have someone from Ministry of Labor and Social Development. Guess what? I work in Mukono and I work for Chinese, but what was given to me as per the contract is not what is being paid at the end of the day. When you try to say, when you try to raise your voice, you're fired. What is the minister doing about that? Then to Douglas, they're saying that do these federations do unannounced surveys at where we work, or it's just about membership? I'll first throw it to you, Douglas, because I think to Mr. Wanda, it was just an observation. Komakech is telling you what is happening in Mukono in a factory where he works. To you, Douglas, do you make unannounced visitations to these companies or these employers?
And thank you so much, Mr. Komakech,
yes.
And Businja as well. What we are trying to do and what we pride in as the Federation of Uganda Employers is that every good employer is our member.
Okay.
So first, bottom line, the minimum requirement is that you should be committed to be a good employer. That's the first reason why employers join. And of course, you'll find a challenge finding with us bad employers. Most of them will not join. Because as a bare minimum requirement, we want to work with the employer to promote good practices. And we believe in the collective good. Essentially, that's why even our theme is talking about sustainability of jobs. Jobs cannot be sustained through exploitation. I've said it many times that if an employer, for instance, pretends to pay, workers pretend to work. And that's not good for anybody. So exploitation is not beneficial to the employer as well over the long run. Because that business won't be sustainable. It will definitely collapse. Elsewhere in the world, systems are now in place. They are getting here as well, where people are buying products based on the credibility of the employer.
Absolutely. Now that brings me to a question, Mr. Opio. The labor laws and the company laws, which supersedes the other?
Unfortunately, there is no law above the other. All laws are important, and they have particular aspects that they address. When they're in conflict, that's when you go to the Supreme Court to try and decide which one should take precedence. But it's only the Constitution which is superior to the rest of the laws. But Company Act, Employment Act, they are all laws, and they're implemented as such.
Okay, now joining us for this conversation we have that is Maria from the National Project Coordinator, International Labour Organization. Good morning, Ms. Jackie Banya.
Good morning.
I love your safety standard operational procedures. COVID is real and COVID kills. Thank you so much for taking that. Now, the conversation we have had, you can clearly see there is a lot of harmonization between the government, the federation, and the employers. From where you stand, someone working for an international organization, describe for us your relationship with the federation over the 60 years.
Thank you so much, and thank you to NTV for all these SOPs, all these safety measures. We like to commend NTV for this. And really, first of all, also thank you for the opportunity for inviting me over. And congratulations to the Federation of Uganda Employers for marking 60 years. I bring you greetings from the ILO director that is responsible for Uganda, a country director. And that brings me to one thing that I need to bring out. A lot has already been said about the tripartite nature of the ILO. The International Labour Organization is tripartite, and the tripartite nature was well elaborated by the commissioner, the director for labor, and the executive director of Federation of Uganda Employers. Without employers, this organization would not be standing. It has got the three legs. So the employers are a very critical part of this tripartite organization, and workers, and so are workers and the government equally. And the International Labour Office is the secretariat. That is the office for which I work. I just wanted to make this distinction very clear from the beginning, so that we know that the International Labour Organization is actually comprised of these three: the government, the employers, and the workers. And then the International Labour Office, which is headquartered in Geneva, is the headquarters that coordinates this organization. It's this permanent secretariat, and it has got offices, field offices, in over 40 countries, of which we have the nearest field office that covers Uganda is in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania, and is headed by the director. And with the field offices, we have branches, like, for example, where I am based in Kampala, but directly under the administrative leadership of the country office in Dar es Salaam. Having given you that background now, the ILO membership of Uganda, Uganda's membership to the ILO dates back to June 1963. And the relationship with the Federation of Uganda Employers, if it is traced back, you find that dates back also to the 1960s. It has been cordial. It has been one that is, I must say, without the Federation of Uganda Employers, the ILO's operation in this country cannot be authenticated. In other words, any development cooperation work that has to take place in the country needs an endorsement of the employers. The government takes the lead whenever there are delegations that go to the International Labour Conference every year, apart from the oncoming of the COVID, where we have had to witness online. But I must say that the Federation of Uganda Employers constitute the tripartite delegation that go to the conference, which conference decides on a number of things. For example, standards, which were mentioned. The organization is a standard-setting organization in the sense that labor standards are set, and when they're set, you have to come down. So now I'm coming down to Uganda. When it comes to domesticating these standards, the government, the employers, the workers have to agree on this form of when they come to domesticate, because nothing can be applied unless the employers have had the endorsement. The point I'm bringing out is that the relationship is such that one cannot do without the other. Yeah. For us to operate, we must have all three in agreement. And the belief is that if they're in agreement, then we are able to move, we're able to push forward. And the goal is the pursuit of social justice. And we talk about decent work. This goal of decent work cannot be achieved, in fact, without employers. So our relationship has been so cordial, it has been so necessary. It's a partner that cannot, it's been that of partnership and working very closely through the government with the workers. And I must tell you that for any single work that should take place, without the endorsement of one of the partners, it cannot take place. So I've said very many words, but what I want to tell you is that the Federation of Ugandan Employers is very dear to the ILO. On the ground, we have had very cordial relations with the Federation of Ugandan Employers in as far as implementation of our development cooperation programs, in defining the priorities for Uganda. As far as the goal of decent work is concerned, we have a decent work country program, which is our programming tool. And the Federation of Ugandan Employers participates in determining what are the priorities for Uganda. For
Jackie,
example,
right there, that said, how are we faring as Ugandans when it gets to international labor standards? Are our employers compliant? Are they complacent in one way or the other? Or are they, you know, evolving from the international perspective? How are we holding up as a nation?
I must say that when we talk of standards, we are so blessed that we have the Director for Labor with us here. And I'm sure that he already did touch on standards. Uganda is doing very well in the sense that, you know, a number of standards have been ratified. We have, I think, 30 in force, and then they've been domesticated, meaning translated into practice, into law and practice. And of course, when we come down to implementation, we have got some challenges. And these challenges are not due to, you know, there's goodwill that is being domesticated. I will give you a practical example. We have policies, like in the area of employment, have employment policy, governing employment. We have a national policy on HIV/AIDS in the world of work. We have policies that govern child labor, for example, national child labor policy. These policies, and then we have legislation that actually domesticate the standards that Uganda, the government of Uganda, has ratified. And when I'm saying the government of Uganda here now, you know, the ratification instrument is signed with the government, but with the endorsement of all the other partners, the federation and the workers. Then it comes down to practice. So the collaboration that needs to exist in terms of realizing these standards is where the gaps can arise. And I want to say gaps because issues of awareness, first of all, of these standards. How many Ugandans know about the laws thoroughly? Talk about the 8-hour rule for work. How many know? There are so many who could be working beyond extremely long hours without knowledge. But the government is doing its level best to ensure that enforcement takes place. But the arm cannot reach. That's why I had some questions coming out that, you know, we have gaps. And these gaps arise out of other factors which I cannot elaborate. So I must say, yes, that there is a lot of effort being made, and we recognize the effort that, you know, these laws are actually, you know, domesticated and it's being applied. But as to whether enforcement is taking place 100% is another thing that I cannot dwell on right now. But I must say that we are satisfied from the side of the ILO that the government has really tremendously you know, done very well along with the partners. Every time they participate, there's no standard that can be endorsed without their participation. And after that, even the fact that, you know, there is effort to revise laws like the Employment Act, for example. There's a review going on, not only the Employment Act, a number of laws, because of the changing world of work. And now we have the COVID-19 pandemic and its crisis. The government has done a lot, and we can see that we are seeing that there's an effort to see that these laws are adapted to the changes and to address the new challenges that the world of work is bringing.
Thank you so much, Jackie. We'll get back to you a little later. That seems much more exciting. International labor law, that is the national coordinator. When you look at all these, one would love to be a member of the Federation from where she's speaking. Mr. Rajesh, you as one of the members, why should one join this federation? With all this that is being said anyway.
Yes. See, FUE is the voice of the employers on various social and economic issues. FUE also help us in advocacy with the government, which is very important for the private sector and for the employers. Also, Federation of Uganda Employers sits on the various boards of the MDAs, and there our voice as an employer can be heard. So there are, apart from that, I have already said the training and also HR manual. So there are many other advantages of being the member of the FUE. So, and we have taken the help of the FUE for the advocacy on various fronts and many times.
Okay. There is a tweet I really wanted to read for you. This came in from just a minute. Please you bear with me. The names of those on Twitter are really weird. This one is called Sembatia Elisha. He says, good morning, Andrew. Thank you so much. My question goes to my response goes to the government official, Mr. Wandera. This is why we go to our private lawyers. One, we believe that the federation, I think that is of Douglas, the lawyers there are there to defend their members. They are never vying for us. There is no level ground. That's why we choose to go on the other side. Does government have any other platform where we could cry and put our plights and they can be listened and then later sent to the federation? To you, Mr. Wandera. That is a Sembacha Elisha.
Now, the drafters of the employment laws were very alive to the fact that conflicts will arise. And the Employment Act provides for channels for complaint. So does the Labor Disputes Arbitration and Settlement Act. So any worker who has a complaint has the opportunity to report to any district labor office.
Okay.
And when this matter is reported, it will be drawn to the attention of the employer, and where the parties resolve it at the level of the workplace, then it will be settled at that point. However, where they fail to do so, the law provides that a labor officer may seek to resolve this matter either through conciliation, mediation, or arbitration. And on a daily basis, a number of labor complaints and disputes are being resolved at the different labor offices. So I would like to tell Mr. Sembatia, if you have a complaint and you are in Kampala, there is a labor office in all the divisions of Kampala, and if you choose not to go to any of the KCCA labor officers, you may file your complaint with the labor office at the ministry, and your matter will be resolved. If one is not satisfied with the decision of a labor officer, whether it is a worker or an employer, the Labor Disputes Arbitration and Settlement Act provides for a right of appeal, and appeals from a labor office lie to the industrial court, where the matter will be heard by the judges of the industrial court and a ruling made. If you are not satisfied at that level, you have again the right to appeal to the Court of Appeal. So the channels of redress of complaints are available.
Well, Douglas, to you,
Yes.
He alludes, Sembatia says that they go to their lawyers because your lawyers will always protect the interests of their members, like Rajesh. What's your comment on that?
I think I just want to inform Ms. Sembatia that we don't promote wrongdoing. Yeah, even when that happens to be an employer. Actually, there are cases where we have had to advise the employer to settle it out of cost because the employer is in the wrong. So you will not lose a case on the basis of technicalities. That happens usually in commercial courts. But the principle of the industrial code, the principle of industrial relations is built on fairness. Yeah, and that fairness implies that you're not victimized because of any technicality, but do you have a case? Director explained it quite well, and I will not elaborate again that again. So it's not about simply trying to side with an employer. If the employer is wrong, we'll definitely advise the employer, you're wrong, you're better off settling this matter out of court, don't proceed with it, you will eventually lose.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe, Andrew, just to add to what you have said, what we emphasize while settling labor disputes is the substance.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Not issues of form and procedure. We have no standard manner in which you write your complaint. But if you go to the courts, your plaint must be in a certain form, and if you don't follow that procedure,
you lose.
Then it will be struck out, as they say. But for us, if your complaint is in Uganda, we'll get someone to translate it for you. If you write it on plaque paper from an exercise book and write, we'll receive it.
You'll take it that way.
And even in the process of settlement of disputes, we are not bogged down by issues of procedure and technicalities.
Wow.
Yes. The issue is substance.
Very
As I said, can you prove that you are employed? If yes, can you prove that you are not paid? If the employer is saying, I paid and I usually pay through the bank, provide the transfer, which shows that the money went to the bank and the matter will be settled. So that's why we are saying that in some of these matters, if it is your right to have a lawyer, but you actually don't need one, because the issues that we deal with are straightforward. But if you want to exercise your constitutional right and you have the funds to do so,
please.
So if you do not have access to services of a lawyer for one reason or the other, you should not fear to go to a labor office or even to the industrial court, because you will be allowed to make your case in industrial court without a lawyer.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would like to advise...
just briefly, we still have some adverts run here, but if you're part of the conversation and you're online, the questions that are coming in, please keep asking those questions as we're celebrating FUE at 60. We'll take a break for now and we'll be back shortly. It's the conversation ongoing. Your questions to the Ministry Director, to the Federation and to NOTU, as well as to the ILO, could possibly be coming through. Take a break. We'll be back shortly. Well, it's still a great afternoon. Those joining this conversation is the Federation of Uganda Employers is celebrating 60 years. And it's in that backdrop that we're having a conversation how to have a very decent working environment, how employers can be compliant as well as the employees, making the best of their work environment. On that, I want to appreciate those sending in the feedback. I want to assure you that the people we have in studios are carrying this. The director, that is Mr. Wandera Martin, Director Labour from the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. He's taking every issue you're highlighting, as well as the Federation of Uganda Employers, that is Mr. Wandera, rather Mr. Douglas Opio is taking it at heart. But before we went for the break, Mr. Rajesh, you wanted to guide the employees on not to waste funds on lawyers. How best can they go about this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Andrew. Neither the employer nor the employees, according to me, needs lawyer. And I had the experience of in Uganda for last 20 years.
Okay.
The workers, when they have any dispute or any confusion with their employers, they can approach the Federation and ask and give their case in writing, and ask for a written opinion. Now, when you ask for a written opinion, the Federation can never give you a wrong written opinion. And once you get that opinion, you can understand that is it you are on the wrong foot or the employer is on the wrong foot. And if the employer is on the wrong foot, give that opinion to the employer. Okay. And the employer will fully understand it. He will be pressurized to understand it, let me say that way. So I think this would be the best way to handle it, according to me.
I totally agree. Coming to you, Mr. Owere Wilson Ashe, who happens to run for the Workers' Member of Parliament to come 2021. There is an issue that has kept on coming, that is to do with the Chinese employees in this country and the way they're treating Ugandans with a lot of degradation, a lot of issues, according to what we're getting online here, that they're suffering a lot on the side. As someone who is the chairperson of a trade union in that regard, what needs to be done to such employers?
No, first of all, any investor coming to Uganda must know that we have laws in this country. Yes. And by having laws, they must first of all conform with those laws. And there's also issue of investment agreement that our country makes with the, let me say, the Chinese and other countries. Because before I make that investment agreement, they must factor in issues that are related to the laws, especially the labor laws. You look at the investment side, the finances, and then you look at the labor. But I think most of the people who go for these agreements, they don't bother. They just sign agreement. Then when these people come here, they tell them they need cheap labor. And that's where the problem emanates from. But with the help of Federation of Uganda Employers, International Labour Organization, and the government as a tripartite, we must stand firm and ensure that laws, the labor laws, are actually followed to the latter. And that's why National Organization of Trade Unions, we fought very hard to ensure. By the way, when I came in, there was issue of lack of industrial. The courts had been put on abeyance by government for over 20 years. And in a claim, they were saying that because they were scaring investors, like they are talking about minimum wage. Oh, yes. And I stood firm and I told the government, you must restore industrial court. Today, I'm happy industrial court is there. What we need to do is also to expand, let it go to other areas, because it's now in Kampala. There's no way somebody from Ajumani, somebody from Kisoro, somebody from Amalata will come to Kampala on take that case to the court, to industrial court. So what we need is now to make it actually at the regional level, where we have cities, let it cascade and go down to the other areas. There is also issue of inspection of industries, where we don't have the labor officers are very thin on the ground. Actually, we have now 140 districts in Uganda, around 146, but you find that there are only 38 labor officers. Now, we would also like those labor officers to come back to the center and be governed by Ministry of Labor, because those labor officers are supposed to be the ones actually helping at the district level. But because of them being under employer, because when you look at the structure of the local government, the cow is the head of workers in that district, and labor officer is under him. So he cannot, if he is under the cow, who is an employer, he cannot be effective. So we would like those labor officers to be returned back, be decentralized. I hope the director will say something about that, so that they are directly under the ministry They are independent and they are able to run and ensure that they inspect workplaces. But as the National Organization of Trade Unions, we have and our sister COFTU, what we did, we countered that by making sure that now we have 2 representatives of workers in every district. And these 2 workers represent us in the council. So they are able now to preside over any issue relating to workers at the district level. What we are now trying to strengthen is to train them so that they now actually work together with the labor officers at that level, as we are waiting for them to be strengthened. But what we need now is strengthening of the labor administration so that the issues of workers are tackled right from the grassroots up to the national level. And we are trying our level best to do that. And that's why you are asking me about my candidature. And I want to add value to our representation in that parliament, because I know when I'm there, all this what we are talking about will be done.
Thank you so much, Mr. Were. Now coming back to you, Director. 38 labor officers, isn't it a big deficit?
Let me start by saying that we have, as at the end of last month, 102 labor officers, and not 33, as my colleague said.
38.
But still, we still have to cover that ground.
Oh, yes.
The 30 so that do not have is still a problem. Then regarding the industrial court, Mr. Owere is aware that Parliament passed the Labor Disputes Arbitration and Settlement Bill 2019. It awaits assent, and what it does, it increases the number of judges from 2 to 5, and therefore we hope initially to start with having regional circuits, but later construct court premises so that we have resident industrial court judges in the regions. So that will facilitate expeditious resolution of disputes. With regard to inspection, I agree with you, Ms. Owere. As I said, you have over 500,000 workplaces with less than 200 labor officers. So that creates a challenge. But the approach that we have taken is to use a risk-based approach. We carry out a profile of workplaces and see those that present higher risk, and we target those ones, like construction and some industries like the ones that are being mentioned. I would like to assure our listeners that I have taken note of the workplaces that you have spoken about, and the Commissioner Labor and the Commission Occupational Safety are following this program, and I'm requesting them to take up this matter so that this week we have inspections teams sent to the company that is constructing the Rusega MPG highway and the industries in Mukono that they have mentioned.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Coming back to you, Miss Jackie Banya, when we listen to all these that is happening all around, what is your opinion about implementation of the international labor standards here in Uganda? Earlier on you said we have a challenge to implement them. What could be the key factors that are hampering the implementation process?
Thank you very much once more. I see that you're really pinning me down on implementation here.
Oh, yes.
And from my point of view as ILO, I think that our Director for Labor and the partners might be having more hands-on. But nevertheless, we operate in Uganda. And what the ILO does is provision of support in terms of the technical to develop the policies. And when they're doing the reviews, we do provide support to the partners, the government, the employers, and the workers in the shaping of the policies. And then when it comes to the implementation, we also do provide support in terms of capacity building. For example, the Director for Labor has mentioned the inspectors. So we do have programs that are targeted and, to building capacity, so that these laws can be implemented. I take the case in point for labor inspectors. We have a manual for labor inspection, for example, that and many other guidelines and tools that are meant to ease down to make implementation possible. And when even the laws have been domesticated, there is no guarantee. I think the director himself has said the number there is enormous. The size of the scope of the work that they are faced with. And given that all these workplaces need to be inspected to ensure that the standards are there to, you can just know that it is not 100% possible to inspect all workplaces. And that means, therefore, that implementation gaps are there. It could probably not only mean in terms of the number of the inspectors, but we're looking at the quality in terms of their capacities to be able to do this work. So that's where we also contribute, for example. And when it comes also to getting the employers, by the way, the employers, Federation of Uganda Employers is very, very, very important. Being a sole umbrella organization for employers and our link with the private sector. And we all appreciate that the private sector has got a very important role in comes to job creation. So the Federation of Uganda Employers, we work with them to make sure that the companies adhere to these standards, and that even the corporate social responsibility that the Federation of Uganda Employers has been promoting through that partnership with the public. It's something that we also all benefit to, and supplementing the efforts that the government does, because we cannot rely just on inspection to ensure that standards are there too. The workers, on the other hand, also play a critical role in getting their membership to appreciate that these standards and that need to be implemented cannot take place if the workers have their eyes closed. So they also, through their unions, make sure that they do the collective bargaining agreements and that they adhere to ensure the standards are applied. So implementation is a combined effort. Okay. It doesn't rest solely on the part of government. I see there's a collective effort here. The employers have their constituency, the workers have theirs. The government makes sure that the enforcement arm is strengthened, and even of course the logistics that go with it need to be well provided for. I think that when it goes to Parliament, you make sure that the ministry responsible for labor gets adequate resources to ensure that this inspection that the director is talking about can be well, they can traverse the entire country and ensure that
Thank you, Jackie.
Hands-on. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Now, coming back here, there is another message here on Twitter coming in from Istenda Omkumwa. You bear with me, the names on digital platforms are unique. Sure. Kawayanja. He says, good afternoon, NTV. I'm following the show. I wish to raise a case about the Chinese employees. Most of them disregard the human resource and the safety of employees. This is to the director at a plywood plant in Luero. It pays only 6K, that is 6,000, Mr. Director, per day, and the employee has to buy their own desk mask and gloves. And he goes on and says that they are these are marquees sold to them by the same employer. So you have to buy your own desk mask and the gloves, but the employer is the one who sells them to you. So of that 60K, the employee is to buy the employee, you buy your own food in the 60K, and also sold by the employer, again, the food. Do the math, see how much the 60K me, the employee, is left with at the end of the day. Another one is a plastics plant in Kampala industrial area. You'll find an employee working without gloves, safety shoes. They wear slippers, yet they're exposed to extreme heat. These Chinese have received a contract agreement as suppliers from the government, Mr. Director. I don't think government follows up enough to ensure employee rights and safety. Mr. Wandera, please give me the light of hope if your government really follows up these details.
Let me start by saying that the government, and particularly the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, is very committed to ensuring that the rights of workers are protected in this country in accordance with the law. However, I would like to apologize on behalf of the Ministry that we have not been able to reach every workplace. Because of the constraints that I have given. However, where we get information like the one we are getting, we dispatch teams of inspectors. Unfortunately, I have not got details of the workplace.
At least I have them, we'll be sharing.
Okay, you can share the details of air, and then we act.
Okay.
Now, the other point that I would like to say is that an employer has no right to direct an employee on how they would spend their salary. If NTV pays you, that is the role of the employer. Beyond that, you cannot be directed that you should buy food from the employer.
Oh, yes.
It is illegal. It is a duty of the employer to provide personal protective equipment. It is illegal, therefore, for any employer to ask employees first to work without PPE, but two, to charge employee wages for personal protective equipment that has been given. I would request that details of this workplace are provided so that together with the Federation of Uganda Employers and NOTU, we take it up.
Okay. Yes. There's a question coming in from John Mark Mwanika on Twitter. He says, thanks for the work, FUE at 60. Can Mr. Rajesh confirm that graphic systems allows workers to collectively negotiate?
Yes. It's a good question, and yes, I can very transparently say that we don't have a trade union, no doubt, but we have a workers' council.
Yeah. That's important.
We take care of the workers, and they can come to my office. I am the general manager, and we have a managing director, and any worker can go anytime to the managing director or to my office to talk. Of course, there is a workers' council. Through them, they can bring their issues. And we have 40%. We have around 400 workers at our place, and I'm proud to say that 40% of the workers are working with us for more than 10 years. So this is not so simple. When somebody works for more than 10 years in your organization, and that is also 40%, it means the company have the good practices of work.
Okay. There's another question that came in from Akankwasa to you, the director, again, about the C-Link. The Chinese we work for are very connected with the generals, with the first family, with the state house. Whenever you raise your voice, they will say you lose a job, and even if you report, nothing is going to be done to us. Director, how are you handling this kind of employers in this kind of dynamic?
Let me start by saying that no one in Uganda is above the law.
Nice.
Whether you are an investor, local or otherwise. And my brother here can tell you he's not above the law. I know he knows a number of generals, but that has not assisted him.
He has your numbers, bro.
Yes, and he has my number, but that does not save him from not knowing, from not observing the law.
The law.
Now, many of these investors have studied the psychology of Ugandans. People think that if someone is highly connected, as they say, then they can abuse the law. I want to assure you that if you have any complaint, bring it to the ministry. Do not take, now in this case, do not take it to a labor office. Anywhere, report it to us, even by phone. Then we'll inspect that workplace and we'll ensure that there is compliance with the law and there will be no interference from anyone.
Nice. Nice.
But some of these investors know that if people see you in a photo opportunity with a big person, they hang it in the office. Then whenever you raise someone, no, I will call that one. So these are scarecrows.
Don't be intimidated. This is the Director of Labour in Uganda from the Minister of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Please, my fellow Ugandan, if you're watching this show today, or if you have friends and families, you're sharing this information, no one is above the law. Coming back to you, Mr. Douglas Opio, I know you've been very silent. A lot of issues have been merging here. How has the journey been for the past 60 years, and what are some of the significant achievements you can now say, we have that, we have that, we have that, and we're so proud of these?
Thank you very much. The first, which I'm so proud of, is what the director mentioned, the labor laws. In all these 60 years, we have been at the forefront working with the ministry to ensure that the laws that actually are put in place are not only good for the workers but also good for the employers. So essentially laws that are fair. Secondly is the issue of the level of compliance with the law. I'm so proud of that. When we started, for instance, just to put it in perspective, nearly 90% of the cases that were going to the industrial court, employers were losing. That's down now to just 40%. Wow. Implying that the compliance level with the law has improved greatly on the side of the employer. And for me, that's important because the people risk increases the cost of the employer. Not long ago, there was a case where the employer had to pay nearly 800 million. Now you imagine the implication of paying nearly 800 million for wrongful termination. It has a huge bearing on the side of the employer. So for us, that's really important. So the awareness, the understanding, the compliance with the law has changed a lot. Thirdly is the place of labor in this country. When I started, even in my short career, 10 years now, when I started off, employment and labor matters did not take center stage as it does now. So labor and employment matters are taken quite seriously by the government now. You look through any planning framework, whether it's NDP theory now, whether it's Vision 2040, whatever strategic planning document that the government has, labor is prominent. We have recently also, for the first time, by the way, in the history of our country, created a National Employment Council. A council that is dedicated to looking at issues of jobs, issues of decent employment in this country, and looking towards addressing the issue of youth unemployment. So the place of labor and employment, I was chatting earlier on with the director that at the beginning we didn't even have staff in the Directorate of Labor.
They couldn't understand it.
Yeah, that has changed now. You have the ministry well staffed, capacity is being built. I recognize, of course, we always want more, but we have to appreciate where we are coming from. A lot of good progress has been made. So we have seen a lot of emphasis being put on labor and employment. Even away from this, all the politicians now are talking about job creation. Even nearly every single presidential candidate is talking about jobs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's how important it has become.
There is a question to that regard, a question that comes in from, it's on Facebook. Beshti Karo says, just a question for you, Mr. Pio.
Yes, please.
Is an employee supposed to be forced to write a resignation letter?
No. The simple answer is no. Yeah.
It appears to be like she's one of those who have actually been forced in that regard. And there is another one here that say, what is you say about contractual staff replacing permanent staff who are in trade unions, making unions collapse, the problem of employers currently undermining the trade unions? That comes in from Nelson Sikoria. A lot of contractual workers, rather staff, are taking over the space of permanent workers because I think it works for you. They have limitation to benefits and all that.
You know, one thing I also have to bring to our attention is the changing nature of the world of work. Yes. I don't want to take it in a very narrow angle. The changing nature of the world of work implies employment will not be the same anymore. That's the new normal that we should be accustomed to. For some of you, you might have heard about the issue of the gig economy. Yeah, that was not the case previously. So we are having an evolving world of work. Previously, for instance, I give you a very basic example. In the banks, previously everybody was a bank staff, but now you might hardly find a single bank employing a cleaner. The service is outsourced elsewhere because most businesses want to concentrate on what is core to them. And that is not being done because somebody is in the trade union. People want to maximize efficiency gains. So you want to concentrate doing business in an area where you're competent, where you're good at, and then leave somebody who is good in the cleaning business to employ people in the cleaning area and allow that work. Let somebody who is good at maintenance of equipment, for instance, if you're a telecom company, let those who are good at that concentrate on that. So first, to appreciate that it's not entirely because people are in union. That's why those arrangements are changing. Then secondly, because of the evolving nature of the world of work, people are now afraid to employ long term. If you look at statistics currently, majority of businesses don't last 10 years. It's not a Ugandan issue, it's an issue beyond Uganda. It's globally. Companies have a shorter lifespan. Now, if you have a shorter lifespan, you're not sure whether your business will be there 5 years. You can't give somebody 40 years employment. So that dictates the nature of the contract. So people give shorter contracts because they're afraid of the risk involved. What if my business collapses? What will I do with all these employees? So they give short-term contracts which are more secure. So it's not necessarily just about unionizers.
Rajesh wants to interject on that?
To add on it, contractual employment means there is another employer. We are not taking away the employer. Employer is still there. That employer is providing services to a certain company, some expert services. So still there is an employer-employee relationship, only there is a change of an employer. That's all.
Okay.
Let me just weigh in on that. On subcontracting.
Yes.
The law allows it. But however, what we have noted is that whenever services are contracted, people are moved from good jobs, if I may say, jobs with better terms and conditions of service to those with lesser terms and conditions of
that's
service.
what has to be addressed.
A cleaner who is employed by a bank would certainly have better terms and conditions of service than one who is employed by private cleaning company.
Most likely.
Now, what we are doing under the principles to amend the Employment Act is to make sure that if you contract, people are not moved into terms and conditions of service that are lesser than the ones they enjoyed before. Because if we, taking Mr. Opio's argument, that the idea is to concentrate on what you can do best.
Yeah.
But concentrating what you can do best does not mean that people should take lesser terms and conditions of service. That is something that we'll have to discuss. Then just to say, because the issue of employers who are protected has come up a lot. A month ago, we had a meeting. I had a meeting with the Director of Public Prosecutions to discuss how we can actualize the provision in the Employment Act for labor officers to prosecute. We have been, in principle, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution has agreed to authorize us to prosecute employers who breach the different employment laws.
Nice.
So we are in the process of formalizing that. So sometime next year, labor officers will have prosecutorial powers, because there are cases where you have found non-compliance, but then you cannot do anything. You invite an employer and they refuse. But now, if you refuse to respond to summons, or consistently you are advised to comply with the law and you don't, then labor officers will have powers to prosecute you in the industrial court.
Okay. This is the last one coming to you, Douglas. It comes in from Lois Otim, and she says, is it right for an employer to give staff a notification of 2 weeks to vacate business?
First is the notice period is provided within the law, so that the context varies depending on how long you have worked.
Okay.
Yeah, like for instance, for 2 weeks, it's applicable when you have worked only about 6 months. Yeah, but if you have worked longer, it's up to a maximum of 3 months for those who have worked over 10 years.
Okay, coming to you, Mr. Wede, there is a question here from Gloria Namubiru, and she asks, how do you reconcile labor laws, especially free labor movement and right to work, vis-a-vis the stringent restrictive guidelines issued by the United Bankers Association? For a fact, if a staff is regulated, if a staff is in a regulated institution is terminated for whatever reason, they cannot be employed by another regulated institution. How best can someone go about that, Mr. Owere?
Now, first of all, I think let me first thank the Director of Labor for what he has just said about the amendment of the Employment Act, which now will empower the labor officer actually to prosecute those who are employers who actually refuse to come to them. That's one. Now, about the issue of externalization of labor, is a very touchy issue that needs to be addressed.
Very much so.
And we still have gaps where I think the director will address, but of late we had to sit with the government and ensure that those people who are being taken out, first of all, there's now a stringent measure by the government to ensure that before they leave here, they have a proper procedure they follow. And before they go, they are helped. And they don't allow them to go when they are not allowed. And there are particular countries where they have designated and they have agreement with the country. Now, Bankers Association, I think there are certain things that they are doing which is against the law. There's a way they are trying to restrict workers. First of all, at a certain level, they don't want them to join the union. And they are trying to say it's because of they are handling certain money, or they are handling certain bank issues, they are not supposed to be in. But you know, the freedom of association is very clear. The Constitution allows them to belong to any association. Now, there's also the issue of not allowing them, when you leave this position, you go to another one in a restricted area, you are not supposed to, you know, they must follow the law. Because we have the Employment Act, we have the other labor laws which is supposed to be followed, which is supreme to their local arrangement. And this is where we come in as a tripartite to address such problems. We work out with the Federation of Uganda Employers, especially citing the provision of their, sometimes they have internal mechanism on how they handle their workers. When we know that it is against the law, we alert the Federation of Uganda Employers and then the Director of Labor, who is actually the custodian of the law, to ensure that these are worked out. Then there was also mainly the issue where somebody was actually stopped from working, and we had to go in through so many steps, but later on, after discussing with the management, we agreed that the person be reinstated. So other issues, we handle them at our level, but where it has gone beyond, then we hand over to the authority.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Were. Coming back to you, there is a question here coming in from Andrew Chitandre. I think Rajesh answered this question earlier, but he says, can you sue your employer for unfair labor practices? What are the organizations that can give you a hand in this? Well, Andrew, from where I stand and the director's explanation, just write your complaint, go to any district headquarters, ask for a labor officer, you put in your writing, and they will follow these cases. You don't need a lawyer. Those are costs that are going to just get wasted. Now, this one comes back to you, the director. Someone here says, I'm very much glad that the director stands on national television and tells us no one is above the law. Director, can you and your ministry please talk about the Indian companies as well that degrading us as the way we're working and with issues to do with payments? That you'll address it later. Then coming back to another issue here that came into something to do with inclusion. This is Mark. He said, I am part of the grievance committee and we work with Chinese. However, what we talk about in the grievances committees, they are never addressed. However, we are told to write these minutes and they're kept in files. What does the Federation, how best can the Federation help us that these plights are amplified?
Thank you. First is to appreciate that at the company there is a grievance committee. I think that's the first step in the right direction. The question that is being raised is, how do you get then those to be implemented? Yes. First, I say from the side of the employer, it's a risky venture to be involved in. To pile grievances and document them and never resolve them. Because if the matter is escalated to the industrial court, there will be a basis of unfairness. Even when eventually the employee is terminated for whatever reason. So from our side, we'd be happy to know those employers so that we can engage with them. Because from where I stand, the risk is now higher on the side of the employer, actually. Oh, yeah. Because there is documented evidence that issues are unresolved. So any termination of those employees would be constituted as unfair. Essentially, the employee will say, even if they're terminated for poor performance or other reasons, they will always refer back to that and say, I had a grievance, that's why my employment was terminated, and they will have a basis. Oh, yeah. So for me, it's a risky place for the employer. Okay. Director,
first, let me say this. We should stop racializing
Oh, yeah.
Violation of workers' rights.
Yeah.
Because I know many Opios, many Wanderas, many Okelos, many Mukasas, many Sembatias who are violating
the rights
of Ugandan workers.
True.
But I also know many Patels, many Changs, many Wilfreds who are protecting the rights of workers. So we should not be racial when we are dealing with the issue of rights. If because I know there are more Ugandan employers than Chinese in this country, and many of them also violate the rights of their workers. I do not hear anyone saying, "Oh, this is Ugandans." So, at that point, that's point number one. Point number two is that the laws in Uganda to protect workers' rights are there. But laws, however good, are not self-enforcing. And that's why some people still violate these laws. Like traffic laws. It's known in Uganda you keep left. But you have seen people keeping
right.
Keeping right.
Oh, yes. Yes.
But when that happens, the police intervenes. The problem would have been if there were no institutions in the country to enforce these laws or an opportunity for redress. Or if someone was saying when cases are filed, they are not attended to. They could take long because of the huge backlog. But we handle these cases. And I would like to request all those viewers who have raised these issues to come to the ministry, go to the Commission of Labor's office, report these cases, and then we will follow them up to their logical conclusion.
Thank you, Director. As we're wrapping this up, coming back to you, Jackie Banya, from your perspective, with all these conversation you've had as someone working for an international organization, how best can we fix this?
Thank you very much. Once more, how best can we fix this? I'm sure we don't have one solution. There will be several, and being that we are celebrating 60 years for existence of the Federation of Ugandan Employers, I want to start from the employer's perspective, because it looks like a lot of these issues which are raised is like against the employer, against the employer. So the International Labour Organization is doing a lot of work with the Federation of Ugandan Employers in ensuring that there is capacity built within the companies.
Oh, yes.
And here I'm talking about the standards that we lead these companies to know and to adhere to. So the Federation of Ugandan Employers is doing a lot in this area of employment, so that the space is sensitive to this legislation that governing the workplaces. And enterprise development is a key area. As you know, job creation is one of the goals that we are trying to pursue in the pursuit of decent work as our final goal. So I see also that we work with the Federation of Ugandan Employers, for example, through the Employer of the Year Award. When we have through Employer of the Year Award, we get to award employers that stand out. I think you're aware that if you set up this as a goal, which ILO has done over the years and has worked in close collaboration with the ILO, with FUE, to ensure that employers are all looking forward to be top on the list. And if this is a culture that is cultivated, so it goes a long way to see that standards are respected. We also have good practices, business practices, that through the Federation of Ugandan Employers and in collaboration with the private sector, as I already alluded to earlier on, there is a lot of the goodwill, and it cannot just happen if there is no effort. The public-private partnership that through the Federation of Ugandan Employers is being, advocated for daily and seen to happen in practice. I also know that the business continuity plans. Now with COVID-19, there's a crisis that we have all, without saying much. How can businesses continue in the midst of the COVID, and that the workers don't suffer these contractual or layoffs or the hard working conditions that they do. So employers have a very, very big role, and if they are if they're measuring up to the standards, and that jobs are being created and not lost, that occupational safety and health at work are there too. You had some of the cases of someone wearing slippers where the temperature is quite high. It's all about the use of protective personal protective gear or equipment at workplace. So the employers are at the forefront, and this is where the Federation of Uganda Employers is also making sure that good practices are adhered to, that they do promote them. And so what the ILO is also doing, working closely with the Federation of Uganda Employers to ensure that a job portal is created to link the employers and the prospective employees. So I'm just wrapping up to say that there is a lot that the Federation of Uganda Employers can play in this equation. Whereas you look at government as making sure that the legislation is there, that is applied. It cannot. So more of self-governing, regulation, and without necessarily having the the staff of the ministry behind the employers, because employers are doing a lot so that self-regulation. Okay. And on the other hand, I see that the International Labour Organization is also making sure that working closely with employers to ensure that all these the good practices and the standards, I must say, that are very key, the fundamental principles and rights at work. If I summarize this, I talk about the freedom of association and the right of workers to bargain collectively to determine their terms and conditions at work. If employers know this and they push for this, then we will not have a question of like we had the unions in a workplace. This is a fundamental right at work. Okay. Freedom from being discriminated in the workplace.
Thank you so much, Jackie.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jackie. That is Jackie, the National Project Coordinator, that is from the International Labour Organization. Well, I want first of all to thank all my fellow Ugandans who have been a part of this conversation. It is such a very pertinent conversation. Because of time, we have come to the end of it, and we want to say congratulations to the Federation of Uganda Employers. For the 60 years, it comes with a lot of wealth of experience and skill set and connections. Let's use this to make sure that our employees are safe and the working environment is decent, it is sustainable, and above all can challenge the employees to get to another level. And those who have issues with your employers, the director made it much more clear. Go to the ministry and ask for the commission labor officers, and these are officers who are going to help you out. And just so you remember, just go onto the website of the Minister of Gender, Labor and Social Development. That is another platform where you could go and find the information you need, but you don't need to keep silent about this. And if you're one of those who would like to register with the Federation of Uganda Employers, still look them up on the internet, on Google. Just put in Federation of Uganda Employers. You'll find them and be a part of those. And those who want to join the trade unions, the National Organization of Trade Unions, where Mr. Owere Ashe subscribes, you can as well log on to the website and you find more information. But to those that have been very, so much in pain because of the way the employers are using you, the way they're exploiting you, the way they are, degrading the Labor Act, please and please, I want to challenge you today. Walk to the district level, ask for a labor officer, write your challenges, write your plights, and they'll be amplified. If you're in Kampala, visit the ministry. The directors made it much more clear. No one is above the law. I'm Andrew Chamagero. Good afternoon.